Chapter 5. The River That Carries Names. By the time the ledge reached the river, Orren had begun bargaining with his own feet. One more turn, one more stone, one more place to put the bare foot before the road took it back. The ledge wound down the cavern wall in a long, mean spiral, narrow enough that his shoulder brushed stone whenever his balance failed, which was often. The rock tore at his sleeve. His booted foot slipped on patches that looked dry and were not. His bare foot had stopped feeling cold and begun feeling separate from him entirely, as if some unlucky stranger walked beside him and sent complaints up through the ankle. Iren went ahead. Of course he did. He moved along the ledge, as if it were a garden path. Bare feet, loose cloak, one hand trailing along the wall only when he wished to look decorative. He did not look back often. When he did, his face had the irritating cheer of someone preparing to say something useless. Orren saved his breath by hating him silently. The river grew louder below. At first, it had been only a shape inside the dark, a low rushing under the strange song that moved through the cavern. Volos's song. Iren had not liked him saying the name. Orren had said it anyway in his head, until the sound dulled. Volos, the lord below, the one who had Evara, or whose house had her, or whose rules stood between dead and living and every road that might still be forced open. Volos. The ledge narrowed. Orren pressed his good hand to the wall and kept moving. The river came into view by degrees. Not water first, light. A red-black glow moved under the cavern floor, widening with each turn of the path. It slipped across the underside of stones, touched the damp edges of the ledge, and found old blood on Orren's sleeve. His arm looked worse in that light. Everything did. The bandage Iren had tied had gone stiff and dark. The skin below it throbbed in time with his heart. His fingers had swollen enough that bending them made sparks crawl behind his eyes. The river itself appeared when the ledge spilled onto a wide shore of black grit. Orren stopped. He had expected water. He did not know what this was. It ran like water. It moved in a broad channel through the cavern, swift at the center and slow along the banks, curling around stones worn smooth by passing. But the surface was not a surface. It was skin over depth. Names moved under it. Not written, exactly. He saw one rise in pale letters, stretch thin as it rode a current, then dissolve before he could read it. Another turned below the surface, bright as a fish's belly. Some were not letters, he knew. Some were only sounds made visible, little knots of breath and memory. They gathered along the bank, where the current slowed, bumped softly against one another, and slipped onward. Orren forgot his pain for 3 heartbeats, then remembered it all at once, and nearly sat down without meaning to. Iren caught his elbow before he fell. Orren pulled free. "You are becoming predictable," Iren said. "You are becoming unbearable." "Excellent. Predictability is a much greater flaw." The river whispered. No, not whispered. The names did. They touched one another in the current and made small sounds, lips shaping last words, mothers calling, men swearing, children asking whether it was time to go home. Nothing loud enough to understand. Everything loud enough to know it had once belonged to a mouth. Orren took one step toward the bank. Iren's hand came across his chest. "No, I wasn't. You were." Orren looked at him. For once, Iren's face held no joke. "Do not drink," Iren said. "I was not going to drink." "You were thinking of touching it. That is different. Down here, differences enjoy pretending to be bridges. Do not trust them." The river curved below them, black at the center, red along the edges where light rose from beneath. The air above it was cooler than the cavern air, and wet enough to ease Orren's cracked throat by the mere idea of breathing. He swallowed. The movement hurt. Iren noticed. "Of course, especially," he said, "when thirsty." Orren looked away. On the near bank, figures stood in loose clusters. Souls, he thought, and hated how quickly the word had become usable. Some were pale and thin as candle smoke. Others looked nearly alive except for some wrongness. A woman with seaweed in her hair and no water dripping from it. A soldier with an arrow through his throat who kept trying to speak around the shaft. A boy with both hands cupped as if carrying something small and precious, though Orren could see nothing there. They did not look at Orren. That was worse than staring would have been. A few knelt beside the river and dipped their fingers into the current. One old man lowered his mouth to the water, then lifted his head with a name shining briefly on his tongue. He swallowed. The light vanished. He began to weep, but no tears fell. "What is this place?" Orren asked. Iren's eyes moved over the bank. "A crossing." "I can see that." "Then why ask?" "Because crossings have names. This one has too many." Orren looked back to the water. A name struck a stone near the bank and broke apart into 3 smaller names. Each drifted in a different direction. His throat tightened. "Does every dead person come here?" "No." "Did Evara?" Iren did not answer. Orren turned on him. The movement made the cavern tilt. He caught himself against the wall and stayed upright, because falling would have wasted time. "Did she?" "I do not know." "You always know enough to avoid knowing." Iren's mouth tightened. "Good," the river whispered under them. A woman down the bank began to sing softly to herself, but the song had no tune, only the shape of one. She stopped when she could not remember the next word. The dead boy with cupped hands turned toward her and offered whatever he held. She looked at his empty palms and smiled anyway. Orren could not bear it. "She drowned," he said. "Wouldn't she come by water?" "Reasonable," Iren said. "I do not need reasonable. I need true." The god's eyes shifted toward the river. "The dead do not arrive according to the poetry of their deaths. Burned men may come by road. Drowned women may come by stair. Kings may crawl. Children may be carried. Murderers sometimes appear neatly at the proper door, which remains one of the universe's more tasteless habits." "Orren." "I am saying I do not know." Orren stared at him. Iren held the look this time. No sidestep. No grin. No escape hatch in the face. "I do not know," he said again. The words should have been useless. They were. They also had the shape of truth, and Orren hated that more. A sound came from the river, not a name. A pole through water. Orren looked. A boat moved against the current. It had not been there a breath before, or it had been part of the river and separated itself only when needed. It was narrow, low, and made of the same dark brightness as the water, its sides constantly moving while holding their shape. Names slid beneath its surface and rose along the bow like sparks, then sank again. At the stern stood a figure in a hooded cloak. No cloth moved around it. The cloak was river dark, and under the hood there was no face, only rushing water caught in the suggestion of one. 2 arms held a pole longer than the boat. The arms were too thin, or too long, or both. When the pole dipped into the current, the river bent around it with the obedience of something touching itself. Iren straightened. Orren noticed. The boat came to the bank without touching it. The prow hovered a hand's width from the black grit. The hood turned toward Iren, then toward Orren. The water inside the hood moved faster. "The living is early," the porter said. Its voice was not loud. It was every stone in a riverbed speaking at once. Orren's bruised body tried to step back. He did not let it. Iren lifted a hand. He followed me. The hood turned slowly toward him. Behind the porter, the river carried 3 names past the boat. One was bright enough to make Orren's eyes ache. It vanished under the hull. "Poorly, then," the porter said. "He is before you." Iren's expression soured. Even here, even now, Orren nearly laughed. It hurt too much, so he stopped. The porter looked at him again. Name. Orren stiffened. Iren spoke at once. No. The river's surface tightened. Every whisper along the bank dimmed. The porter did not turn from Orren. Name. Iren stepped between them. He is not crossing as received. Name. He is under road guidance. Name. I brought him under the old allowance. Name? Orren swallowed. His own name had been safe once. A thing shouted across taverns, written badly on tavern slates, breathed by Evara in the field. A thing that had belonged to him because no one else wanted it enough to take it. Here the river carried names like Fishbones and Last Coins. He said nothing. Iren's voice lost its lightness. You will not take his name. The porter's hood tilted. I take nothing. I carry what enters. That distinction has drowned better arguments than yours. The road God remembers manners when the water can answer. I remember many things, Iren said, selectively. The dead along the bank had begun to watch. Orren felt their attention gather, not hungry, not cruel, curious. The dead were curious in a way the living were not. They had already suffered the worst common surprise. The porter's face water rushed harder. Road wing. The name moved through the cavern. Iren's shoulders tightened. You bring a living trespass by old ways, the porter said. You refuse the bank its question. You deny the river what every mouth owes before it empties. He is not empty, yet. Iren said nothing. Orren hated how much that yet entered him. The porter leaned slightly forward. Orren did not see eyes. Still he felt examined. Blood, breath, raw throat, salt, grief, the broken place where Evara's name kept striking. Then the porter said, Orren Keld. His name hit the river, not from his mouth, from the porter's. It appeared under the surface in pale letters, whole and bright for one instant. Orren lunged before thought. Iren caught him around the chest and hauled him back. The name vanished under the current. No, Orren gasped. He did not know what he meant. No, do not take it. No, give it back. No, I did not give it. No, do not let it go where Evara might not hear. The porter's hood remained turned toward him. The river knows names that have been spoken in grief, it said. Yours has been loud. Evara, he thought. Had she spoken it? In the water? Below? His heart beat too hard. Evara Soln, he said. Iren closed his eyes. The river changed. Not much. Enough that the dead nearby drew away from the bank. The name did not appear in the water. Orren stared. He said it again, louder. Evara Soln. Nothing. No pale letters. No bright fish flash beneath the current. No whisper. No answer. His chest went cold. The porter looked down at the water, as if listening to something below hearing. Not by my bank, it said. Orren's knees nearly failed. Iren's hand caught his shoulder. This time, Orren did not pull away. What does that mean? Orren asked. The porter said nothing. What does that mean? Iren answered quietly. She did not cross here. Then she is alive. No, you do not know that. I know enough. Not here means not dead. Not here means not here. Orren turned on him. That is nothing. No, Iren said. It is strange. Strange is not nothing. He had said that before. Orren gripped it now, because there was no other hand near enough. The porter lowered the pole into the water. The boat slid closer to shore. The living crosses under road guidance, it said. The river carries him to the outer gate. It does not receive him. It does not name him beyond what grief has already made public. It does not return for him unless return is owed. I appreciate your generosity, Iren said. The porter's hood turned toward him. I stated terms. Even better. Generosity without warmth becomes tolerable. Payment, Iren sighed. Orren looked at him. Iren reached into the air beside his own ear and pulled out 2 coins. Orren stared despite himself. They were not like any coins he had seen. Thin, dark, each with a hole in the center, edges worn smooth by fingers or teeth. One side showed a wing. The other showed a road bending into a line of water. Iren held them between 2 fingers. The porter did not take them. 3, it said. Iren's mouth tightened. For a living man not received. For a living man. A road wing. And the song that follows. Orren went still. The song? He asked. The air beside him warmed. Not much. Enough that the hair along his arms lifted. He smelled wet feathers, blood, salt, Malin. Iren did not look at him. He produced a 3rd coin. The porter extended one long hand from the cloak. Water ran over fingers that were not fingers and did not drip. Iren set the coins in its palm. They sank through the water skin and vanished. Bored, the porter said. Iren stepped into the boat. It did not rock. Of course it did not. Orren stood on the black shore and looked at the moving riverwood, if wood was what it could be called. The side of the boat held its shape, but names moved through it. One passed under his hand's reach, and he saw, or thought he saw, the first letter of Mara's name. He stepped back. Iren looked at him from the boat. Haste! Orren hated the word. Haste had put him ahead of Evara in the water. Haste had put him on this road. Haste would still take him below, because love had become a thing with no patience left. He put one hand on the boat's side. It was cool, solid, not wet. He climbed in badly. His injured arm failed halfway, and his ribs struck the side hard enough to make him gasp. Iren caught him by the back of his shirt and dragged him the rest of the way in, with no grace at all. You handle rescue like an insult, Orren said through his teeth. Then you understand my method. The boat moved before Orren had settled. He dropped to the bottom and sat with his back against the side, breathing hard, eyes shut against the rush of red-black light. The boat did not feel like a boat, not truly. It felt like standing on a thought the river had agreed to hold. Names moved beneath him, around him, under his hand. He curled his fingers away from the surface. The porter pushed against the current without strain. Iren stood near the bow, looking ahead. The river carried them deeper into the cavern, away from the bank of waiting souls and the whispering shore. For a while, Orren tried not to listen. That was impossible. The names brushed the boat and spoke as they passed. Not clearly, not all at once, but near enough to wound. A mother's voice, Tarin, not the river, come back from the river. A man laughing, tell her I sold the good knife, not lost it. A child. I was holding it. A woman so old her words had worn smooth. Enough now. Orren pressed his palms over his ears. The names entered through bone. Iren glanced back. Do not chase any one of them. I am sitting. Your mind is not. Can you hear them? Yes. How do you bear it? Badly. Over time. The honesty silenced him. The boat slid around a bend. The cavern widened, then narrowed, then widened again, as if the river had no respect for ordinary stone. On both sides, banks appeared and vanished. Once Orren saw a set of stairs descending from nowhere into the water, every step crowded with souls waiting to board a boat that did not stop for them. Once a field of white reeds grew along the bank, each reed tipped with a name burning like a tiny lamp. Once the river split around a black stone island where no dead stood. No names drifted, and even Iren would not look. Orren looked. Of course. On the island lay a crown, not a fine one. Iron, dark, plain, too small for a man, too large for a child. He blinked. The island was gone. What was that? Iren did not ask what he meant. Not yours. That is an answer to a different question. It is the answer to the one that would have killed you. Orren let that sit, because he had no strength to pry. The thirst returned as the boat went on. It had never left, perhaps. It had only crouched under larger pain. Now it rose behind his tongue, thick and demanding. His throat had sung through storm, screamed through water, swallowed salt, coughed blood, spoken too many names in a place that hoarded them. Every breath scraped. The river moved within reach. Cool, full. Names slid under the surface. Light moved with them. The water lapped silently against the side of the boat. "Do not drink," Iren had said. Orren swallowed nothing. His throat hurt. Iren and the porter stood near the bow, speaking low. Not in Skeldrun, not in any language Orren knew. The words were quick, old, edged with familiarity. Iren's voice had lost its frivolity. The porter's remained water over stone. Orren caught only one word, because it sounded the same in any mouth. Malin. The warmth near Orren's shoulder stirred. He looked. Nothing there, only air. Red-black river light. His own hand on the side of the boat. The thirst pressed harder. He imagined Evara sitting in the passenger room with broth in both hands, taking his cup because he had offered, and because hunger was not pride's servant. He imagined her in the field saying, "Then ask whether it lets poor girls through the gate." Had she said that, or had he imagined it after? There had been so many things she might have said, and no time to keep them in order. He imagined her behind him in the water. No, not behind, beside. Then ahead, his memory blurred, and thirst moved into the gap. The river touched his fingers. He had not meant to lower them. A name slid over his skin, not written, felt. It was not Evara's. Still it passed through him like cold through cloth. A man's last shame, a hidden coin, a door left unbarred. A daughter never apologized to, then gone. Orren jerked his hand back. No one turned. The water had left no wetness on his fingers. Only cool, only relief. He stared at his hand. His throat burned. Iren said something sharp to the porter. The porter answered. Iren's shoulders stiffened. Orren looked at the river. Not a drink, just enough to wet his mouth. He knew the thought was foolish, because it dressed itself reasonably. He leaned over the side. The river did not rise to him. That made it feel less like a trap. He cupped one hand and lowered it. The water entered his palm like ordinary water. Cold, heavy, beautiful. A name coiled in it, pale against his skin, then dissolved before he could read it. He lifted the handful to his mouth. At the bow, Iren turned. No, too late. Orren drank. The water went down like winter light. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then thirst became enormous. Not in his throat, everywhere. He had been thirsty all his life, and had not known it. Thirsty in taverns while singing for bowls. Thirsty in the field with Evara's hand over his. Thirsty in the water, on the beach, beside Malin, on the road. Thirsty for food, yes, and warmth and applause, and a mother whose name he had not had, and a father's face, and a room that needed him after the song ended. Thirsty for Evara? He bent for more. Iren reached him and caught his hair at the back of his head, yanking him upright. Orren snarled. He did not mean to. The sound came from somewhere lower than his voice. Iren stared at him. The porter did not stop the boat. Names rushed past. "What?" Iren said very softly. "Did I tell you?" Orren wrenched free. His scalp burned where Iren had pulled. Good. Pain. Body. Boat. He swallowed. The river water had left no taste in his mouth. It had left certainty. Evara was below. Evara could be found. The road was worth any cost, because the only cost that mattered had already been paid when she vanished. The doubts that had troubled him, the ship song, the look on her face when he said, "Follow," the way she had said she did not want to be moved without choosing, stood now at a distance. He could see them, yes, But as a man saw houses along a road he had no time to enter, he would get her back. Then they would speak. Then all of it would find its proper shape. The thought settled in him cleanly, too cleanly. Iren still stared. Orren wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "I was thirsty." "That," Iren said, "is the least interesting reason anyone has ever damned himself." The word should have frightened him. It did, less than it should. What did it do? Iren's face was pale. That frightened him more. "It listened," Iren said. Orren looked at the river. Names moved under the surface, unchanged. What did it take? "The river does not always take," Iren said. "Sometimes it files." The porter turned its hood slightly. Iren's jaw tightened. "Do not look smug. You do not have a face." The porter said, "The living chose. He is half dead with fever and grief. Choice often arrives poorly dressed." Iren looked as if he might strike the porter. Orren nearly laughed. That frightened him too. He pressed one hand to his chest. Beneath skin and salt and pain, his heart beat slowly, strongly. The panic that had lived there since the water was quieter now, not gone. Harnessed? He tried to remember Evara saying, "I need to know I chose." No, that was not what she had said. What had she said? "I don't want to be moved without knowing I chose to move." There. The words returned, but they felt less sharp than before. He would ask her forgiveness for the songs, for all of them. He would learn. He would change. He only needed to get her out first. Shore first. Then turn. His fingers dug into his palm. The boat struck something. Not hard. A soft arrival. The far bank had appeared without approach. Black sand, paler than the first shore, rose from the river in a long slope. Beyond it, the cavern opened into a wide plain of ash-coloured stone. And farther still, Orren forgot the river. The gates stood across the plain. At first, he could not understand their size. His mind tried to make them cliffs, then towers. Then the ribs of some god-buried beast. Bone pillars rose from the stone, each broader than a mast, each curving inward at the top toward a darkness stretched between them. Not shadow, not night, void. It had no surface and no depth. It was a place where sight went and did not return. The bones were not white. They had been white once. Now they were the color of old teeth, smoke-stained and veined with black. Chains hung between several of them, links thick as barrels, disappearing into the void as if something on the other side breathed and shifted in sleep. The air before the gates moved. Slowly, in and out. Orren stood in the boat without remembering to rise. His ruined body swayed. Iren gripped his elbow before he pitched over the side. "Easy." Orren could not answer. The song he had heard from the ledge was clearer here, though still distant. Volos's song, coming from somewhere beyond bone and void, beneath rooms, beneath names, beneath the old law of death. It held the dead who had crossed. It held the house. It held Evara, perhaps. He tried to hum. Only a rasp came. Blood touched the back of his tongue. Iren heard. His hand tightened around Orren's arm. "What?" Orren asked. Iren did not look at him. He looked at the gates. For the first time, Orren saw fear on his face, without any decoration over it. "Nothing?" Iren said. The lie was so poor that it almost became kindness. The porter extended one long arm to the bank. "Here the living leaves." Orren climbed out. His bare foot sank into black sand. The boat moved away before Iren stepped after him, then seemed to remember the road god and let him disembark onto a stone that had not been there. Iren did not thank it. The porter did not look as if it expected thanks. The boat slid back into the current. Names flowed around it. Just before the river bent away, the porter's hood turned toward Orren one final time. "When you return," it said, "bring what remains of your name." The boat vanished around the bend. Orren stood on the far bank with river certainty cooling in his stomach, and the gates of bone and void breathing ahead. Iren came beside him. Neither moved for several breaths. Then, from somewhere inside the void, a chain dragged across stone. Orren's skin went cold. Iren exhaled. "There," the Roadwing said softly. "Now we are where hope begins to read the terms."
Rain on the sill, salt in the flame. When the door goes quiet and the room lets go, lay the last word gently where the dark runs slow.
There is still a road under ash, under rain. There is still a voice trying not to break. Carry the song through the dark and the foam. Carry the name when the cold calls home. Leave one small light where the lost can remain. I will find you by listening. You will know me by name.
Rain on the sill,
Salt in the flame. The door goes quiet. Carry the name.